Okay, welcome back to another episode of Secure Governance. I'm your host, Jimmy Skirts, and this is lesson 2 of GRC Made Simple. And today we're going to talk about cybersecurity GRC examples. In lesson 1, we used a coffee shop to explain GRC. Now let's take the same idea and move into the world of technology. Businesses don't just need to worry about broken espresso machines, they need to worry about hackers, lost data, and digital mistakes. That's where GRC and cybersecurity comes alive. Now, don't forget, this course is for beginners, or maybe if you are a IT help desk, excuse me, you can use this information, but also be on the lookout for my road map, should I say, to where you can land an entry level job in cybersecurity. So today we're going to be doing cybersecurity GRC examples. Okay, the risks we face. When we talk about risk in cybersecurity, we're talking about the threats that can impact an organization at any time. These digital storms can hit without warning, causing significant damage to operations, reputation, and financial stability. Understanding these risks is the first step towards protecting your organization and the increasingly complex digital landscape. Right now, if you follow the news, you're seeing a lot of cities under cybersecurity attacks, a lot of city halls. And when that happens, the whole city hall can shut down. So, what are the digital attacks that we face? Well, system breaches, hackers breaking into systems to steal sensitive data or disrupt operations. Number two, phishing attacks, employees clicking on fraudulent emails that compromise security. And let me say this again, you're going to hear this continually from me. And when I consult with different businesses, I tell them all the time, all it takes is one jerk in a box employee and the whole house comes crumbling down. Either someone that gets caught slipping, not paying attention, or a disgruntled employee. That's all it takes. So, you're at work using the company email, you receive an email that looks familiar, that looks like you've seen it before, and you click on it, and as soon as you open it, you're done. Also, lastly, infrastructure failures, servers crashing, and taking entire business operations offline. You need a backup system. Okay? And this is why we have GRC from the start. So if something happens, we have safeguards in place and we're prepared. Okay, so let's talk about governance and cybersecurity. Governance and technology establishes the framework for how any organization manages and protects its digital assets. It's like setting up digital traffic lights that keeps everyone moving safely through the information highway. Now, again, we talk about governance as how the organization runs. So, for example, access control management, determining who can access sensitive files and systems based on job roles and responsibilities. I'm going to give you an example. And this is I hate this. So, I talked about in lesson 1 how I got a new doctor. And when I go to the new doctor's office, right? They hand you an iPad and they say, "Hey, we want you to fill out some information." You go into the iPad, a form comes up, you fill out all this information. They want to know everything about you. Okay. Then you press the finish button, and then the form goes somewhere in the doctor's office. It's going to go to a database, most likely a database in the cloud. Now, the question I have, who has access to this cloud? Does every single person in the office have access to this cloud information? And some offices that are small, they all have access to this. That means the nurses, the medical assistants, administrators, they all have access to these files, which should not be the case. So, access control management, determining who can access sensitive files, and systems based on job roles and responsibilities. Everyone shouldn't have the same access as everyone else. That's how we keep security. And the individuals that do have that access, you need to be, as I said, I say this all the time, and this is August 2025. Every employee, I don't care who it is, every 60 days, there should be a credit check to see if they're in debt so they're not vulnerable to bribes or theft, criminal background to make sure you don't have any felons who are facing felony charges for fraud, and lastly, social media checks to make sure you don't have anybody unhinged or promoting some cause where they can share your information. Everyone shouldn't have access to all the information, so we have access control management. Password policy implementation, creating and enforcing company-wide rules for strong password creation, rotation, and management. That is the number one killer. When these criminals are using software to crack passwords, you need to have a complex password. An easy password is going to be determined and they're going to get access. So, password policy implementation, and you should be changing your passwords every 30 months. I'm sorry, every 30 days. I apologize. And last, software update protocols. You need to be updating your software because what's good today is not good tomorrow. Establishing schedules and procedures to ensure all software is patched and updated in a timely manner. Software updates are important, even on your own home personal computers. You have like Microsoft Defender will protect you against phishing, spam, etc., etc. You need to update that software because what you're protected from today, there may be a new virus that comes out and you're not protected. So software should be updated among all individuals. Risk in cybersecurity. Risk in technology involves identifying potential threats, assessing their likelihood and impact, and developing mitigation strategies. It's the proactive approach to digital security, like locking your doors before leaving the house. The key is not just identifying what could go wrong, but developing plans to prevent, detect, and respond to these scenarios. I mean, the best example I like to use, and again, not playing politics, it is what it is. Under the Biden administration, they had an open immigration policy. Everybody could come across, millions of people. Under the Trump administration, that's not the case. It's shut down. The problem is all of these millions of people coming through unvetted, you don't know who these people are. So, in the immigration policy of the United States, they are clearly have not been using GRC protocols. Because if they did, they would be understanding, if we let all these people come into the country unvetted, it's a possibility that a large segment of these people are going to be criminals. So we need to vet them. But they didn't do that. It's a probability that these people are going to have mental health scenarios. And we didn't do that. But most importantly, it's a likelihood that some of these individuals that came across are terrorists, terrorist cells, and there should be safeguards in place to prevent that, but they didn't do that. So now, if the terrorists come over and they're here, that means there's the potential threat, and most likely, eventually, threat that these terrorists are going to do something. How do we combat that? How do we prepare for that? Are we prepared for that? I'm going to say probably not. Probably not. And so that's where GRC and every organization should principles should be implemented. Now, compliance in cybersecurity. Compliance in technology means adhering to laws, regulations, and industry standards that govern how organizations handle data. It's about demonstrating that you are not just protecting information, but doing so according to established requirements. In the financial sector, for example, banks must follow strict regulations like the SOX, the GLBA, the BSA, and the AML to protect customer financial data and prevent fraud. If you have a credit card, these banks have your information, and there's protocol on how to protect your information, and they must follow it. In the health industry, hospitals must adhere to HIPAA regulations that establish strict protocols for handling and protecting patient health information. I'm telling you, you go into these small clinics, and again, lady hands me an iPad. They want to know everything about you. My question is this iPad secure? Because the iPad is running off of the office's Wi-Fi. Is your Wi-Fi protected? Is it encrypted? Because a guy could be right out in the parking lot and logging in. Do you know, when you go to a doctor's office and you want to use your tablet while you're waiting, the office has Wi-Fi. So that Wi-Fi signal is strong enough where you could be in the parking lot and pick up that signal. If I'm a hacker, I could drive right up to the doctor's office, pull out my equipment, log in, tap into your Wi-Fi signal in the office. And if I'm good enough, if you don't have an encrypted system, I can hack into your data frame with no problem. With no problem. So to prevent that, the healthcare industry, HIPAA, has established rules. Do I think all of these small offices are adhering to that? Probably not. Next, e-commerce. Online retailers must comply with PCI DSS standards to ensure secure payment processing and protect against transaction fraud. Amazon, Target, Walmart, all of these big chains must follow these standards. Compliance is ultimately about proving, yes, we're playing fair and protecting people's information according to the rules. Now, one of the reasons why you should consider getting into GRC, because you're going to see, and everyone's talking about it, a lot of jobs in technology will be disappearing or disappearing right now because of AI. However, GRC is not going to be one of them. Now, GRC analysts and auditors will be using AI to assist them in implementing GRC, but you're always going to need a human to oversee the AI, to oversee the computer, the robot, whoever else may pop up in the future. Until one day they create robotic intelligence that just thinks like a human and never dies. That's some scary stuff. But we'll talk about that in another lesson. Now let's talk about example one. Online shopping website. How GRC works for e-commerce. Major online retailers like Amazon implement comprehensive GRC frameworks to protect their operations and customer data. Number one, governance. Establishing strict protocols for which employees can access customer data with role-based permissions and audit trails. Now, again, if you ever look at the social media videos, you see the Amazon drivers speaking and communicating, and some of the drivers, not to be biased, you know, can be real. I'm trying to think of the word. Um, Not the most desirable people that you want handling your information. So you definitely need a GRC plan in place. So establishing strict protocols for which employees can access customer data with role-based permission and audit trails, because the wrong person getting your information can be deadly. Risk. Identifying payment system vulnerabilities and implementing multi-layered security to prevent breaches. Think of the millions of people that go to Amazon.com and make purchases with their credit information, and they store it there. You know, when you check out, your information is already there. They store it. So if Amazon doesn't have GRC principles in place to protect your information, you're screwed. Now, let's suppose they are breached. Okay? You got to have a plan in place. What happens if we're breached? What happens? How do we protect customer data? And lastly, compliance. Following payment card industry data standards, PCI DSS, to ensure every transaction meets global security requirements. And that's why you need GRC analysts and auditors to make sure that whoever is handling credit card information, involved in credit card processing, taking payments, they're following the standards that are already set up to make sure that no breaches occur. And if a breach does occur, you already have a plan in action to protect the customer data and the individuals involved. Example two, a hospital network. Let's talk about governance. Implementing role-based access control where doctors, nurses, and administrative staff have precisely defined access levels to patient records. Now imagine you get an illness and you go into the hospital. Who has access to those records and why? The doctor's going to have access to information. Now, I'll give you an example. Suppose I'm a celebrity. I go into a hospital for a treatment. The information should be confidential. Now, who has access to the information? If the wrong person gets access to that information, they could take it and sell it to the media, right? So we have to know who's accessing that information, why they're accessing it, and when they're accessing it. And that's what GRC is all about. So when I access into the medical records, okay, I have an ID, I have a name, and what is my position? And every time I log in, why are you logging in? And I need to type why I'm logging in. And then someone comes behind me to review the daily logs to see, okay, so and so access this patient's information. Why they do it? What was their reasoning? Why did they need to do it? So, governance, risk, as I told you before, deploying advanced threat detection systems to identify and block attempts to steal personal medical information or deploy ransomware. Now, again, if the wrong hacker group gets into a hospital system, they can shut the whole hospital down. That means if I'm in the hospital and I'm scheduled for an operation and the scheduling system is hacked and the doctor doesn't have access to x-rays, MRIs, etc., there goes your operation. There goes your operation right there. If there's not a backup system in place, you're screwed. And then once again, I'll give the example of the celebrity or the high profile person that checks into the hospital for an emergency procedure. And if the wrong person gets access to the information, it's going to be sold to the media. So what do you do if that happens? What if that happens? Okay, you have to have a plan in place. So if that happens, you understand the risk that could happen before it happens, and you have measures in place to prepare yourself, and so you have a plan implemented to mitigate the risk. Compliance in the medical industry, they should be following HIPAA regulations through regular audits, staff training, and technical safeguards to protect patient privacy. So, if they're following HIPAA regulations, then that minimizes the risk of anything happening. And that's where the GRC analyst or auditor comes in, who will audit everything to make sure that the entity is complying with HIPAA. Without effective GRC practices, a hospital could face devastating consequences, including the loss of patient trust, regulatory penalties, and compromised care delivery. Medical facilities that prioritize GRC build a foundation of trust, security, and operational excellence. And let me tell you right now, a lot of these hospitals, medical clinics, etc., yeah, they follow HIPAA to an extent, but they don't have GRC plans in place. I'm telling you. And as we go in time, they will. But again, remember, with credit card information or financial data, you can correct that because money is just digital. It's just numbers. So when these banks say, "Oh, I'm not going to give you your money back," no, they can give you your money back. It's just numbers. But healthcare information, that lasts forever. And we have a nation state war going on right now where nations are using that information to attack the vulnerable people in that nation. I'm going to give you the best example: the pandemic. Suddenly, a virus appears from nowhere. And who's affected? The vulnerable populations. But they knew this. They knew this before it was used. They knew if you had diabetes and they released this virus, bye bye. They knew this. They knew this. All right. Now let's talk about social media companies. Social media platforms like Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter or X operate in a complex digital environment where user data protection and content management present unique challenges. And again, you're using these apps, okay? If Facebook gets hacked, all of the personal data is valuable because it's valuable for criminals, but it's valuable for nation states because now they can use that information to target vulnerable parts of your population. For example, I mean this is a bad example, but it's the truth. Do you know alcoholics frequent together? Drug addicts frequent together? They do online. They communicate with one another. They talk about online where you can buy the best drugs at. Go here, go there. They're actually doing that. So if I'm a nation state, okay, I can say, hey, you know what? We need to target drug sales in this area and we need to sell bad drugs because this area of this country has a lot of drug users. So let's take out the youth. If you want to destroy a nation, you don't start with the adults, you start with the youth. You attack the youth. You get them hooked on drugs. Okay? You get them hooked on drugs, alcohol, tobacco. You get them to be overweight. You kill their ambitions. You attack the youth. That's why information is important. And social media is an extreme outlet where they can gather information. And so, with governance, establishing content policies, community guidelines, and internal controls for data access and risk management. Okay? You know, you have a lot of youth under the age of 18 that use social media. That information is extremely valuable. So if the hackers can get it, they know what to sell you. They know when you're awake, when you're not. They know everything about you. And conversations between people are very valuable. Risk, monitoring for fake accounts, coordinated inauthentic behavior, and potential breaches of private user messages. Compliance, adhering to regional privacy regulations like the GDPR in Europe, the CCPA in California, and evolving global standards. These companies must live and breathe GRC every day, as their entire business model depends on maintaining user trust while navigating or increasingly regulated landscape. And again, I'm going to keep hammering on this. Before you're dealing with criminal organizations that are stealing social security cards, uh, social security numbers, credit cards, etc., but for financial gain. But now we have the nation state threat. They want this information so they can learn about the population so they can attack it. If you want to destroy a nation, you destroy it from within, not from without, and you attack the youth. What are the political beliefs? Democrat versus Republican. What are the issues that people are talking about? If we can cause division, we can destroy the nation from within. So information is highly important. That's why it needs to be protected. So a quick recap. Cybersecurity GRC in action. And lesson 2, we've seen how GRC principles are applied specifically within cybersecurity contexts. With governance, the framework, it's the framework that determines who makes technology decisions, sets policies, and oversees digital security. We talked about in healthcare, they use HIPAA. Okay. In the financial industry, they have a framework that they use, etc. Risk, the systematic approach to identifying, accessing, and mitigating potential threats in the digital environment. So, in cybersecurity, we don't wait until the threat comes and say, "Oh, we should have did this." No, we sit down and we discuss. Oh, say, okay, what happens if our framework is hacked? What happens if our server goes down? What happens if a virus happens? What happens if one of the employees gets a deep fake call and they think it's the finance department and they release $1 million? So you think about all these things ahead of time and you prepare for them. And that's what a GRC analyst does. He comes in and analyzes, okay, what does the business do? Okay, what type of business are you running? Okay, you're running a car dealership. Okay, so what are the risks that a car dealership could have? For example, okay, I got a car lot. I got 100 cars on my lot. Someone could come at night and steal the car. That's a risk. How do I prepare for that financially? Well, what you probably want to do is put a tracking device in the car somewhere where the thief can't find it. So if they steal the car, you can track the car. Or maybe you need to have cameras all over the lot and different angles, different degrees, maybe across the street. So if someone does steal the car, you got the tracking device and you got the video camera to show who was there. Okay? What happens despite that? They get away with the car. So you want to have. And what happens if, okay, they find the tracker? Okay, maybe you should have more than one tracker in the car. Maybe you have a tracker in the mirror. Maybe you have a tracker in the steering wheel. Maybe you have a tracker in the tire. Multiple trackers. So you don't just wait for risk to happen. You think about the risk that could happen and implement plans. And then what further helps is compliance, the process that ensures an organization adheres to relevant laws, regulations, and industry standards. By complying with these rules that are already established, that will protect you. Okay? Now, next up in lesson 3, we'll explore how GRC fits within the world of cybersecurity consulting, examining why businesses engage specialized experts to strengthen their security posture and navigate complex regulatory landscapes. And this is why you're taking this lesson. You're taking these lessons, and because you have the desire to become a GRC analyst or auditor. And I'm going to see you in lesson 3. But also remember, look out for the roadmap that will show you everything that you need to do, in my opinion, to get the first entry level job in GRC. And remember, GRC is not a technical role. However, you need to know the generality, how things worked. For example, I used the example of a real estate developer. A real estate developer knows how to develop real estate, meaning, okay, he knows where to find the land to build. He knows how to speak with code enforcement. He knows how to speak with builders. He knows how to speak with banks. He knows about timetables and timelines, etc. But if you talk to him how to build the frame for a wall, or how to lay the pipe, or how to flatten the ground and build a foundation, he doesn't know how to do it personally, but he knows what has to be done. And that's the same thing in GRC. I got a business, okay? You need a secure server. You may not know how to do it, but you know what needs to be done. So we're going to talk about how GRC fits into the world of cybersecurity consulting, and I will see you in the next lesson.